very impressed by Hizmet's ability to extend itself in education and its emphasis upon education. To Turkey, that Hizmet, there was disaster. Been asked since I made a trip to Turkey. My name is Loyd Allen. I am a professor of theology at Mercer University's McAfee School of Theology. I'm also an ordained Christian minister. I came to know the Hizmet movement through an invitation that I received from the Atlantic Institute by way of a friend of mine, and was able to make a trip to Turkey at their generosity for their hospitality. My opinion is very positive. I had, when I first heard about it, I didn't know about it, and I wasn't sure when I went on the trip, and the trip lasted a couple of weeks, just exactly what it was. I had some natural suspicions about whatever motives or purposes for the folks who would pay that much to take us on this trip. But from what I learned on that trip and since, I'm very positive about it. When I think of the founder of this movement, I am impressed that he seems to be one of the great religious and humanitarian figures. And I find it strange that he is not better known and that I had not known of him before. When I think of what Mr. Gülen is doing in the Hizmet movement and the people that work with that, I think of people like Gandhi or a Martin Luther King kind of person. Of course, those are very different kinds of persons, but I see them coming from a religious core to go beyond their religion, beyond just doing religious charity, for instance, and creating a movement that does good for the world at the physical level of charity, but also at the civil level of how societies work, and at the religious level. And that's where I would have been most strongly influenced in my time with people from the movement, is the interfaith kind of dialogue, which I think is so essential between Christian and Muslim in our day and time. In my view, the Hizmet movement represents Islam in a very positive light. I don't know of another organization that is as able to express its genuine spirituality and piety as an Islamic movement, which also provides as positive a view of Islam's place in the wider world through such things as education, interfaith dialogue, support of democracy, support of higher education, universities, support of business organizations, and all of this flowing from a kind of sense of the value of our common humanity, but never politicizing this in anything that I can tell, and also never backing off of the understanding that this flows from a faith, and a particular kind of faith, the Muslim faith. It is hard for me to choose what Mr. Gülen's greatest achievement is for doing good. If I had to choose, I think I would choose education, because it seems so broad and deep in the movement, and it exists at so many levels. at one level, just literally creating schools for children who might not otherwise have a decent education, and this done in many countries. But at another level, I myself was a recipient of education. I learned about Islam, some things about Islam. I learned about Turkey. I learned about the history of that part of the world on this trip. And I have continued to learn about Islam and Turkey through the things that I've been reading since then, and through my association with an institution here in Atlanta called the Atlantic Institute, where I've made some friends and have been able to participate in some programs. I'll be going to one that is connected to that at Morehouse College soon to discuss peace building. And so I think education I would choose. I know that Hizmet has many schools that are in a number of different countries. Some of those countries are in places that have quite a bit of conflict in them, and so those schools bring together persons from both sides of the conflict where they may get to know one another. I think that that kind of education is crucial for understanding in conflict situations. I am very impressed by Hizmet's ability to extend itself in education and its emphasis upon education. I think also that its emphasis upon education for children from kindergarten up, that it catches them early, and that it will make a greater difference because it's there for the long run. I have had the opportunity to visit Hizmet School in a couple of them in Turkey, not while they were in operation, I'm sorry to say, but I am impressed by the facilities and by the faculties that I met there. And I was in schools that were for small children. I was also at a university that is related to the Hizmet movement. How can we achieve reconciliation in conflict without knowing more about the other than we know? And Hizmet's education emphasis works that way, works towards that education. I know that interfaith dialogue is one of the core principles of the Hizmet movement, and that's probably the most influential for me because I happen to be a clergyman in the Baptist denomination. I'm a Christian, and I teach Christian ministers. The Hizmet movement creates spaces such as at the Atlantic Institute here in Atlanta, the Istanbul Center here in Atlanta, where those kinds of dialogues, the dialogues of interfaith between my faith and Islam can take place. And it's been very positive, very well done. The speakers have been very informed and very helpful. So I don't sense in my experience with the persons in these organizations that I mentioned, I don't sense a kind of hidden agenda. It seems to me that they have formed their dialogue and the space for this dialogue in a very open. Hizmet, I know, because I visited a disaster relief place, has disaster relief operations, and the one I visited was in Turkey, but they have them in over 100 countries. And this relief is provided regardless of a person's faith or political stance. So that's very impressive to me. And I had some friends who, when I visited the Disaster Relief Center in Turkey, that a group that I travel with got a chance to visit. And we had a couple of people in there who do some work with Catholic Relief Services. So they were familiar. I learned on a trip that I took to Turkey that Hizmet does disaster relief in over 100 different countries. and provides economic relief along with after the immediate difficulties in countries. And I also learned that they provided that relief without asking what a person's ethnic or religious background was. So I was impressed with this response to just basic human need that Hizmet provides. I also visited one of these relief centers, not at a time when there was a disaster, but the place where they prepare the materials and things to be sent out. I was visiting with a couple of people who had worked with other major disaster relief organizations. If I said the name, you would know them. And those persons were so impressed with the quality and the abundance. They said that there would be few places in the world where you would find this kind of ability to quickly get help to persons who were in deep need. There was also, I don't know if I will remember the slogan, but the name of the slogan for this disaster relief came from a person who was trapped under debris and asked, I can't remember if the question was, can you see me or can you hear me? I think it was, can you hear me? And I thought that that went right to the heart, that Hizmet was answering, yes, to persons who are in disasters. We can hear you. We will help you. I have been asked, since I had the opportunity to make a trip to Turkey with the Hizmet Movement sponsorship, what their real motive is. And I know that there have been people who've criticized Hizmet, wondering if there is some ulterior motive to what they do. I am not qualified to look deep into how Hizmet works, but I had an opportunity when I was doing some sightseeing with the group, and I happened to run into a person from another country who was working for Hizmet and had been for several years in one of their organizations. And she was A, not a Muslim, and B, not from Turkey, and C, had no official reason to have conversation with me because we just happened to bump into each other. She was touring, I was touring. And I sat with her and asked her this very question and said, you have the freedom to tell me, and I want to know, what does it look like to you from the inside? She was very positive and said that as best she could tell as a professional working within one of the organizations, that the purposes, particularly the humanitarian purposes, because that was something she was close to working with, were very positive. I don't think I could get a better source, personally, to answer the question of, to answer the criticisms of what is the real motive here. I think the motive is what is said, and that is that we're working in interreligious dialogue. We're working to do basic human care and concern for all persons, doing education. So I'm satisfied that that is what Hizmet is about.
Everything about the Hizmet movement that I have experienced, the people and the actions of the movement, are of loving, caring, giving people whose acts of charity and generosity are just staggering.
I think that Hizmet's ability to create spaces for persons from one culture or ethnic group or religion to meet persons of other ethnic groups, populations, religions, is a very positive thing.